regard to the first question, I've seen... Looked like it was on. Okay, there we go. With regard to the first question, I've seen no evidence that any of the weaponry that was originally provided to the Afghan security forces over 20 years and then wound up in the hands of the Taliban after the Afghan government and military forces imploded in Afghanistan. I've seen no evidence that any of that weaponry has been transferred to any other group. And I might add, the most significant terrorist group that is present and active in Afghanistan, ISIS-K, is for the Taliban a mortal enemy. And indeed, ISIS-K has been engaged in attacks against the Taliban, against Christians in Afghanistan, against other groups, and so again, I've seen no evidence of that. Second, with regard to human rights, let me say a few things. First, as the Foreign Minister was saying, and as I just noted, we stand strongly for human rights at home and abroad, and that means, among other things, ensuring that governments are protecting the right of assembly, of free speech, and in that context, of course, in Nigeria, we had the EndSARS protests, the actions taken by security forces, the alleged abuses, which have now been investigated by these panels that were established at a state level, and very important to provide that accountability, to provide that transparency, and, depending on the conclusions of the reports, to take action to, as necessary, reform the security forces, to hold accountable any of those responsible for human rights abuses, and to do that again in full transparency. And so we'll look to the states here as well as to the national government to do that when the reports are published. More broadly, in everything that we're doing together in partnership with Nigeria, human rights is, of course, a feature. And we were discussing as well, and you heard the Foreign Minister talk about this too, when it comes to security assistance that we're providing. We want to make sure, together with Nigeria, that the assistance we provide is used in a way that fully respects the human rights of every Nigerian. And as I think the Foreign Minister said very eloquently, along with providing hardware, we are also working together on the software to make sure that those using the military equipment that we provide are trained, are steeped in the laws of armed conflict, bring to bear the absolute necessity of doing everything possible to avoid, for example, civilian casualties when that hardware is used. So that also infuses all of the work that we're doing in partnership with Nigeria.
Our questions will go to Ben Hall of Fox News.
Look, first and foremost, our engagement in Africa, with Africa, our partnership with Nigeria, with many other countries, is not about China or any other third party. It's about Africa. It's about working together to make the investments in Africa, to make the investments in its people, and ultimately to ensure that across the board we help create the conditions so that there are truly, ultimately African-led solutions to any of the challenges that Africa faces. But our support, I think, can be critical in doing that. When it comes to infrastructure investment, again, this is not about China or anyone else. It is about what we would like to think of as a race to the top when it comes to those investments. So it's not simply the resources themselves. It's how they're used and according to what principles. in our case, and the Foreign Minister referred to this, we have, coming out of the G7, the Build Back Better World program. And what's the feature of that program is that there are certain principles by which all of the countries involved will make infrastructure investments, including here in Africa. And so, for example, we want to make sure that as investments are made, countries are not labored with tremendous debt that they can't repay. That's something we won't do. We want to make sure that the rights of workers are foremost in our minds, that the environment is protected, that there's no corruption that comes along with these investments, that we build together to the highest possible standards, and that we invest in areas and sectors that really will be the future for Africa as well as for the rest of the world, to include in green technology and green infrastructure, to include in healthcare systems, to include in information technology. So this is, for us, an affirmative vision of what investment can and should be. And again, it starts with the people of Africa. That's the focus that we're bringing to it. And look, on one level, if there's investment or trade coming into Africa or with Africa from anywhere else, including China, in principle, that's a great thing. And investment in infrastructure is a good thing and a necessary thing. But I think it's important, as countries are considering that again, they focus on not just the resources made available, but how those resources are actually used. And that, at least in my mind, is where our focus is, and where I think, certainly in conversations that I've had just in the last couple of days, as well as before that, where increasingly the minds of our partners in Africa are. Because we strongly support Nigeria's engagement, leadership, and strong voice in both regional and, for that matter, leading international organizations. And if you look at the role that Nigeria is playing in ECOWAS, the African Union, the UN, this is something that to us is very welcome and also very important. It's also striking if you look at the senior leadership positions in many of the leading international institutions in the UN system and beyond, you will often find a very highly respected and experienced Nigerian leader, maybe a former president, a former vice president. And indeed, when it comes to the situation in Ethiopia, the former president, Obasanjo, is the envoy leading the efforts on behalf of the international community, mandated by the African Union to resolve the crisis there. So I just wanted to say this is something that to us is a very, very welcome development, and it makes sense. It befits the fact that this is an extraordinary country with not only by the size of its population and the expanse of its landmass, but its human resources, which are extraordinary, and we really welcome seeing them used to the greatest extent possible in dealing with these common challenges that we face. In terms of some of the issues that the foreign minister brought up, yes, we're working on all of them. In fact, you know, these meetings of one day are usually followed by work going on every single day afterwards. Just to take one example, on visas, yes, we've had not just here, but around the world, we've obviously had a serious challenge brought on by COVID and the great difficulty and, in fact, almost impossibility at various points of processing visas. We've done a tremendous amount of work to build back our capacity to do that. We have backlogs of people who are looking for visas. We have new applicants coming forward. And here, as in other countries around the world, the State Department has put tremendous resources into being able to get back not only to where we were, but hopefully, even in this case, to build back better as well. So we're working on that, and we'll be talking about with our teams other questions or concerns that our partners have brought up. And I apologize because I didn't actually hear your question. I heard it was Belarus, but I didn't hear the end of the question. Well, look, let me say this. It is profoundly unconscionable that Lukashenko and Belarus have sought to weaponize migration. And the EU has made clear its views on that, including with new sanctions. We have in place authorities to, as necessary, add to the sanctions. This effort to, as I say, weaponize migration has to stop, and we are looking very hard at exactly what actions Belarus is taking. But first and foremost, it is doing a terrible injustice to these people that it is victimizing by making them pawns in the efforts that the Belarusian regime is engaged in to be disruptive. And that has to stop, and we will, along with our European partners, with whom we're in very close consultation on this. I was on the phone with the Polish foreign minister just a few days ago. We've been in regular contact with all of our EU partners. We will remain very focused on this, and we'll see exactly what this actually means and what the practical effect of the clearing of the camps is. Thank you.
Thanks for checking out SYMFONI on YouTube. Please be sure to subscribe and like our videos for updates.